Reb Shimshon Pincus, you all heard of Reb Shimshon Pincus, right? So Reb Shimshon Pincus Zatzal, he said, somebody asked him once, what would you do if I think you weren't Jewish? Now let's say you found out your mother's mother wasn't really Jewish. And one day you found out, somehow you found out there was a mistake fell through. We've all wondered, I think we've all wondered, let's admit, what would I do if I was a goy? If I found out I was a goy, what would I do? I had 24 hours to be a goy, what would I do? Kentucky Fried Chicken, well now they got kosher, but what would I do? I know what I would do, for sure, without a question. When I was growing up, the best cartoons were always on Shabbos. Right, so I would get into some time machine and go back and watch those cartoons. They were the best Shabbos cartoons. I could never see those. Those were the really good ones. So somebody asked Rav Shimshon Pincus, what would you do if you found out that you were not Jewish? So Rav Shimshon Pincus said, think about that for a second. You got 24 hours to be not Jewish. So Rav Shimshon Pincus said that he would build a bama, which is a one-stone altar, and it would be makriv a korban, which is the optimum way that a goy could serve. A goy is allowed to be makriv a korban on a bama. He would be makriv a korban, and he'd bring a korban on a bama, and then the next day he would convert to Judaism. That's what Reb Shimshon Pincus said. How many of you were thinking that answer, honestly? And if you raise your hand, then we'll speak about honesty. Right? That'll be our. So obviously, most people do not think in those terms. Compare that to the Rabbi who was in class. And the Rebbe once asked the class, why does Hashem allow Goyim to convert to Judaism, but a Jew can't convert out to Goyism? That's what the Rebbe asked the class. So this kid in the back, this kind of morose, quiet, shy, detached child, raises his hand real quick. And the Rebbe's thrilled to see Yossi why finally wants to say. He says, yeah, Yossi, why? Why doesn't Hashem? He says, Hashem is smart. Because if Jews could convert to be goyim, there wouldn't be any Jews left. That's what the kid, that hurts, right? That's what the kid said. So obviously there's some sort of issue there. So that's what we're playing for. You're talking about two different attitudes in Yiddishkeit. You're talking about the attitude of Rav Shimshon Pincus' attitude, where the greatest gift that we have is to be Jews who can serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you have the other side, which is the kid who would like to escape, and he's speaking for many others as well. Those are the stakes. So as a parent, obviously what we're looking for is to try to instill some sort of, call it enthusiasm, joy, and so on and so forth. Now let's get one thing straight. Mothers often say to kids, something like, well, if you're going to do it with a smile. Right? Ever hear that music from your mother? Your mother asks you to do something. Can you fold the laundry? Oh, grumble. Right? If you're going to do it with a smile. That was the mothers always used to say that, right? Mothers, isn't that true? My mother, I heard that from my mother also. I never said that to my kids. I never said it to my kids. If I said to my kids, guys, you got to fold the laundry. I grumble. I said, listen, guys, you can do it happily, don't do it happily. I don't care. We got to fold the laundry. We can't wear wrinkly laundry. Why? I don't know that mothers do everything with a smile all the time either. It's not like mothers, oh good, let's do the dishes on Motzei Shabbos, crusty cholpat's my favorite. It's not like everything mothers do is always with a smile. The same way, you don't do it, what are you expecting from your kid? You got to do it with a smile? You got to do it. There are those things in Yiddishkeit which people have to do. You have to do it. I don't feel like, I had a friend who told me he woke up his son one morning to go to Minyan. So the son wasn't getting up. So finally his kid says to him, Dad, why should I go to shul? He said, why should I go to shul? So he said to his son, listen, Chaim, tell me you don't want to go to shul. Tell me you don't like shul. Tell me shul is boring. Tell me something else. I'm paying way too much money in tuitions for you to ask me why you should go to shul. Right? That's not the question. You want to go to shul? Okay, I understand. Shul is always so much fun. There's Monday and Thursdays. That's my favorite. There's actually Hurafim. Very few people. By the way, there are two pleasures that no goy in the world will ever experience. No goy. There are two pleasures we have in Judaism that no goy in the world will ever experience. One is a hot piece of potato kugel on Erev Shabbos. Right? No goy will ever experience that. There's actually a second one, which is that second piece of potato kugel that I sneak that my wife really doesn't want me to take. That's the one that's delicious. That's the Mayim Genuvim Im Taku. There's a second pleasure, which is when the Chazid on a Monday or Thursday says, Hamvareches Amo Yisrael B'Shalom. Then there's a Kaddish. right? And everybody in the shul's got a little bounce in their step. Everybody like, whoa, whoa. And there's like one guy says, why no? Why not? Just go, just go, got it, just go now. So not everything is fun. Everything is fun, but that's the goal. The goal is to try to enjoy it. Okay, so like everything else, we look to the Torah to see. We look for instruction. We look to the Torah. There's a remarkable phenomenon that you'll notice or not notice in the Torah. I did not notice this, even though I've been through it many times. It was pointed out by somebody else. If you look at Sefer Bereshis, Avram Avinu, in all of Sefer Bereshis, Avram Avinu talks to all sorts of people. He talks to Sarah, he talks to Lot, he talks to Avimelech, he talks to Paro, he talks to all sorts of people. You never find a conversation between Avram Avinu and Yitzchak. Never talking to Yitzchak. Isn't that remarkable? He waited all those years for Yitzchak and he never speaks to him. You never find a conversation between Avram Avinu and Yitzchak. Yitzchak Avinu. Isn't that remarkable? Except when he's on his way to Shechtim. That's the only time you find Avram speaking to Yitzchak. On the way to the Akedah, then all of a sudden he speaks to Yitzchak. Before that, you never find Avram speaking to Yitzchak. And the first lesson is, because obviously a parent leads by example. That's how, you could talk till you're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, a parent leads by example. What the child sees, children are imitators. Children are the biggest imitators. My first son, when he was 3 years old, was a little pitzel, about this, he had tall as a table. And I walked in one night, it's about 10:30 at night, 10:30, I don't know why he was up. That's a different question. But at 10 o'clock at night, the refrigerator door is open, and he's got a big bottle of what you call soda, what we call pop. Right? He's got a big bottle of soda in his hand, and he's sitting there, a 3-year-old, he's drinking from the bottle with the open refrigerator. And as I looked at, it's not the end of it, it's not a terrible thing, I just looked at it, my first thought was, where did he learn to do something like that? And I realized that he must have seen my wife drinking from a bottle, that's probably... So at the end of the day, a child is an imitator. A child's an imitator. If a child sees how his father davens, he sees how his mother is careful about Shmiras HaLashon, how a father is careful about how a father gives tzedakah, how a mother is tznius, all the things that children see, children are going to imitate. So at the end of the day, the first step is that a person has to understand, and I'll take it a step further. The Torah says this week's parsha, what we just read, it happens to be that this week wasn't pre-planned, but this week is mamish all of the Yesodos of Chinuch in this week's parsha. The Torah says that Avram Avinu, when the guests came into the house, so he sent Yishmael. It says that he gave the knife to the nar to go shech the calf. That's what it says. He told Yishmael go shech the calf, and he also says yukach damat mayim, that water should be taken so that for the guests. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein Zatzal says, now why did he send Yishmael? Why does it say he sent Yishmael? It says to be mechan k'dei l'chancho b'mitzvahs. He sent Yishmael to be mechanechem. So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says, I don't understand. There's an implied criticism here, because Rashi says that because Yavram Avinu had the water brought by somebody else, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whatever Avram Avinu did himself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did directly for Klal Yisrael, like the man. And whatever Avram Avinu did through a shliach, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu did through a shliach. And therefore the water came down from Shemayim, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu directly. The water was brought through a shliach through Moshe Rabbeinu. There's an implied criticism there. What's wrong? He did it to be mechanechem. What's the problem? You understand the question? Good question, right? That's what Moshe asked. What's the answer? The answer is you're not mechanech your kids by telling them what to do. You're not mechanech kids by telling the kids what to do. You're mechanech kids by you doing it and then sending you. If Avram Avinu would get the water by himself, the kids would see that's how you treat guests. It's a very powerful idea. Obviously, Avram Avinu had he's running around to do other things, but there's a lesson over here. And the lesson is, it's a fundamental lesson. You don't train kids, you don't mechanech kids. Sometimes I see kids, especially in Israel, in Geula, a woman's walking with her child, and there's a guy in the street who's asking for money, and mother gives the child a coin to drop into the pushka. I don't like that. I don't like that. Number one, I think it's a bizayon to the guy. You got an older man on the street, and a 4-year-old is coming and dropping a coin in his pushka. I don't think that's very mechobidik, number one. Number two, that's not how you're mechanech a kid to give tzedakah. You're not even mechanech a kid tzedakah by forcing the kid to give his money. Oh, you made some money, good, give 10%. It's not how you're mechanech a child. You're mechanech a child by them seeing how you answer the door when a meshulach knocks at the door. When somebody comes to the door and they ask you for money, and you get up from your seat happily, oh good, we have an opportunity to give tzedakah, as opposed to, where's my checkbook? So the child sees, they see everything. They see absolutely everything. So if a person sees The person sees what we're doing. That's how, obviously you have to tell kids what to do, and kids have to, a certain amount, you have to tell kids what to do. On the other hand, the child has to know. When my kids used to ask me, Daddy, your kid comes over, Daddy, do we eat this hechsher? So I would look at the hechsher. So if it's a completely unacceptable hechsher, there are one or two that are completely unacceptable in Israel. There are one or two that are completely unacceptable. Most of them are, at least, if I was stuck on an airplane, I would eat them. I might not eat them lechatchila, that sort of thing. So my kids would come, Daddy, do we eat this hechsher? My standard answer was, I don't know what you do. I personally don't eat this hechsher. I don't eat this hechsher. Yeah, but what do we do? I don't know what you do. I don't eat this hechsher. Right? Not once have my kids eaten it. Not once. If I would say to the kid, no, we don't eat that hechsher, then they could come back later and say, Daddy, you never let me, how come you didn't let me do that? You didn't let me do that? That's just more fuel. Right? We don't, I personally don't eat this hechsher. What do we do? I don't know. You have to decide what you're going to do. My wife once called me in the kitchen. My son was 9 years old at the time. So my wife says to me, Plony's unhappy. Plony's unhappy. I said, Plony won't bench. He was 9 years old. So I said, why don't you want a bench? He said, I want another brownie. Mommy won't give me a brownie. I said, don't bench. I don't care if you bench or not. Benching is between you and Hashem. I couldn't care less if you bench. And I walked out of the kitchen. Guess what? You bench. You bench. What am I going to do for? Bench. Women, mothers in Klal Yisrael have taken that on as the job, right? You are the bench. You're the bench police, right? Chaim bench. Did you bench? Moshe, did you bench? Bench, right? Did you bench? Right? Shimmy, did you bench? I didn't eat bread. That's okay. Just bench anyway. Yeah, bench. Right? So mother has to how does a mother bench? Right? You have to watch yourself benching. Most mothers benching looks like this. Then mother says to me, Chaim, did you bench? I can't. Why not? I don't have the cell phone. How can I bench? I don't have a phone. So if a mother should say to kids, listen, I'm off duty now for 3 minutes. I'm going to be benching. Does anybody need anything? Good. Now I'm going to bench. By the way, they will need something 1 minute in. Don't worry. Don't get free that quickly. They will need something. But at the end of the day, the example that we said, I always use the example. A kid comes home. This is a very common mistake people make. A kid comes home and he says a bad word. Kid says a bad word. How do you react when a child says a bad word? Kid comes in and says a bad word. Because as he walks into the house, Mommy, you're a poopy. Don't you say that word! It goes berserk. Shapels flying up in the air. Now, that's a mistake. Most kids don't even know what they said. They don't know what the word means. They have no idea. Number one. Number two, when you get upset, when you overreact, you're reinforcing it in the kid's mind. You're just reinforcing it. You say to the kid, listen, mensch, I don't want to hear that. A mensch doesn't talk that way. Don't say those words in the house. If you overreact, so then what happens is you just reinforce it in the child. Some people have the custom when somebody says a bad word, there's a minhag that started. People wash the kid's mouth out with soap. Right? That's a minhag. It started in the time of the Spanish Inquisition. They wash the child's mouth out with soap. Now I want to tell you something. If you do that, I never did that. If you do that, all you teach a child is don't say bad words around adults with soap. Right? That's all your child says. So that when he's out of the house, then he can say all the bad words he wants. You really want to teach your child not to say bad words. First of all, if you must use soap, if you must do that, so do it for Lashon Hara. It's much more likely that when the child is 22 years old sitting across the table from a girl on a shidduch, it's not likely he's going to look at her and say, you're a poopy, right? It's more likely that they're going to engage in Lashon Hara. That's why if you must use soap, so use soap for Lashon Hara. But don't use soap, except in the following scenario. Mother comes into the house, the mother's in the house, and you got guests coming for Shabbos, your mechutanim are coming, or you have a whole house full of guests, and you're running around the last minute doing all sorts of stuff, and next thing you know, the wife, she's running around, and next thing you know, oh no, she runs into the kitchen, and there's something burnt. The last kugel or meat or platter is burnt. I'd like to see your reaction right at that moment, ladies. Right? Now, if you stand there and you just go, Gam Zula Tova, right? Then we should all line up and you should give us a bracha. That's what should really happen. More likely is, you just kind of give that stomp, like, oh, that stomp. And then you say something, not horrific, not terrible, but something less discreet than you would normally say. Call all the kids into the kitchen. Guys, I just said a bad word. Watch this. Take some soap and put it in your own mouth. That's going to go much further than any sort of washing out of their mouths. Right? Wash your own mouth out with soap. No, that we don't do. That we don't do. I'm an adult. It doesn't work on adults. It only works on kids. I remember asking my father, my Aunt Dorothy, you remember the cod liver oil? Remember cod liver oil? Yeah, they used to say a thing. People took cod liver oil. You never heard of it? Your parents did, I'm sure, when they were little. They had something called cod liver oil, which apparently warded off all illnesses and diseases and everything else, right? Did you ever have cod liver oil? Right? And apparently it tasted like the devil. And I remember my father-in-law, I once asked him, he said he had it when he was a kid. The kids hated it. I said, Dad, did adults take it? He goes, no, it was only good for kids, so only the kids. And apparently it was really, really dreadful. So that's the first lesson. That's the first lesson in the Torah. First lesson in the Torah is that we are setting an example for our children constantly, and that we learn from Avraham Avinu. Now, the best people ask me all the time. Any questions so far? Feel free at any point to ask questions if you'd like. Anything anything you'd like to ask anybody at all. Okay. The people are always asking me, what's the best book to read on chinuch? And you see, books. I had my Rabbi once said that the books that appear in Jewish bookshops are often what's going on in the Jewish world at that point. So if you see a lot of books on chinuch, that means chinuch is the big hak right now. If you see a lot of books on shalom bayis, that means shalom bayis is the big. Shalom bayis, you guys tell the shalom bayis books. Right? They're the ones with two doves on the cover holding a ring in their mouths, right? The two doves on the cover. People who are like that, you don't need shalom bayis books. Shalom bayis books should have two vultures on the cover with baseball bats. That's what they should really have. That would be, here's a shalom bayis book. They're doves. Doves don't need shalom bayis books. The vultures could use them. So now the new books, you could tell what's going on because they're recipe books with meat boards and fish boards and what do you call it? So we know that there are all sorts of boards running around now in the Jewish world. So you can tell from the books in the stores, you can tell what's going on. The best book on parenting, people are, what's a good book on parenting? The best book on parenting, certainly for men, is the Mesilas Yesharim, the Orchos Tzadikim, the Sharei Tshuva. Any Musar book is good for a father. That's the best book on parenting because men need to get themselves under control before they get their kids under control. A man who's working on himself, so that's the best possible chinuch for his child. For a woman also, but women in general, that's not the issue. The best book for a woman is the big book of Jewish cooking. The big book of Jewish cooking that the children should feel. Rebbetzin Kanievsky, it's a very good book to read. She knew every one of her kids, she knew their favorite foods. She made for each one individually. Right? You'd think that these were the people who are most, so detached from all they ate was rice with water. Not at all. She had every single one of her children, everything. When I get calls from parents, sometimes that father will call me up and he says he's got this issue with the child, this issue, he's working on something with his kid. I said, let me talk to your wife. I want to talk to the mother. I said, why? Because the mother knows the kids better. He says, why do you think so? I said, okay, tell me, how many kids do you have? I have 3 boys, 2 girls. Okay, your second son, what's his favorite food? Clueless. He doesn't even know his second son's name. Right? Second son, what's your favorite food? Wait, let me talk to your wife. Right? The father thinks he's an Iber Chacham. He thinks he knows everything. The men think, we all think that we're running the show. And your wife, I want to hear the story from the wife. The wife knows the kid far better than the husband. I remember my oldest son, when he was about, I think he was in 7th grade. So after school, he was the type of kid who did whatever he had to do, but not much more. He did whatever he had to do. I had no tinus, but he did whatever he had to do, but he didn't do anything more. And I felt that he could be doing more. Especially to compensate for what I never did. So, like most fathers. So I figure out, we could push the accelerator a little bit over here. So he comes home from school. I wanted him to join the after-school Mishnayos program. So I said, listen, if you join the program and you make a siyum, I'll get you a set of Mishnah Bruros. He's like, I said, I'll get you a set of this or a set of that, And my wife is in the background doing like this. She goes like that. I go, how about that 21-speed bicycle? He says, yeah, what time does the Mishnayos program start? So say, the father's got, I got it all worked out. And the wife has the sense of what the kid is really and where the child is holding. A mother, her job is, people are saying, but should we spoil them? What are we supposed to spoil the kids? Yeah. And the answer is yeah. In a word, yeah, spoil. Just spoil. Don't worry about spoiling them. They're not going to get spoiled. It's not, you should make sure. Look, I have a friend, I think I may have mentioned this on Friday, I don't remember. I have a friend whose daughter was a Kala. He's a posek in Eretz Yisrael. His daughter was a Kala. And he gets a call. It was Erev Pesach. He gets a call from a girl on the phone. And she says to him, she's going out during Pesach to see her chassan. Is she allowed to use some sort of cosmetics, this, that, or the other? Or whatever the answer was, chametz, they said, okay. 15 minutes later, his daughter comes home. She says, Daddy, did you get a call 15 minutes ago from a Kala asking about cosmetics? He goes, yeah. How do you know? She goes, it was me. He goes, why did you call? He goes, listen, I've been asking you for the last 3 weeks if I could wear the cosmetics. Every time I ask you, you say to me, I don't know, I have to check, I have to look it up, this, that, and the other. And I saw, and people call you on the phone, you answer right away. So I called, and I got my answer. So this man told me he has a wonderful family, and he said to me a phrase that he said, your home should be a warm bird's nest. That's what your home should be. Your home should be a warm bird's nest. Kids should feel the warmth in the home. We're not perfect. We're all struggling. None of us are perfect. But at the end of the day, a person has to know that we have to create an environment in the home where the home is warm. People always say, what if we spoil the kids? You're not going to spoil. What can you do already to spoil them? Obviously, you have to use some seichel. Can't give the kids everything they want whenever they want it. And we're talking about people who got a little bit of, we're somewhat intelligent. But if it's a question of should I lean to this side and lean to this side, we should lean towards leniency. We should lean towards ease and comfort with the kids, especially in a world today where there are so many things pulling them in the other direction. It's a very challenging world. A very challenging world. The next step, they asked Rabbi Yankiv Kamenetsky how they once asked who was it, Rabbi Yankiv? They asked Rabbi Yankiv Kamenetsky, how did he teach his kids to make brachas? How do you teach your children to make brachas? Rabbi Yankiv said, we never really taught our kids to make brachas. I made brachas, my wife made brachas, the kids saw us making brachas, so they made brachas. That's how you teach kids to make a bracha. I heard about this one little girl, she's about 5 years old, and she takes an apple, and her father says, Chani, I didn't hear you make a bracha. She goes, no, I'm big now, so I can make it quietly like the adults. Yeah. Kids say the darndest things, don't they? Yeah. That means painful. So, obviously, it has to be that sort of training. That's the first step here. When Abraham Avinu goes to the Akedah, and this is the first time we see that Abraham Avinu is going to making contact with Yitzchak. First time he speaks to him, what does he say? He says, Bini. He starts off with the word Bini. Most of the trouble, both in Shalom Bayis and in Chinuch, in my opinion, you take it or leave it, most of the trouble is because of the men. That's where the trouble starts. I've spoken to kids who are what they call, nowadays everything's a letter, right? There's a BT, there's an FFB. FFB means fractured from birth. There's what do you call it? LS, which is a late starter, and then every kid in school is either ADD, ADHD. Sounds like my report cards in high school, except there were no A's. The what do you call it? Everything's a letter and a label. So in when it comes to the connection in the home, Avraham Avinu says to Yitzchak, Bini. Because he says, Bini, my son. Bini is a term of endearment. When I've spoken to boys who are struggling with Yiddishkeit, there are different reasons for different kids. Everybody's got different reasons. And I know the one most common thread that I found through the whole thing is that there's been some sort of unpleasantness with the father. It's always the father. Either the father's too tough, or the father's not consistent, or the father's this, or the father's that. That's what I found as a tzara shava. There's, of all this kid has trouble over here, he has trouble here. And at the end of the day, the relationship with the father is often stressed. It is often strained. A father has to be able to show warmth to his child. Doesn't mean you have to be huggy, kissy, that sort of thing. But father, there's got to be an embracement of the child. He's got to feel he's embraced by his father. Not that his father is a military commander who's just giving him orders left, right, and center. There's got to be a feeling of warmth. You got to be, on the one hand, you got to be a father. On the other hand, it has to be to the extent that the child, even if the father has to discipline him, he understands the father is disciplining him out of love, not out of frustration. That's got to be clear. When I used to potch my kids, it wasn't that often. Don't worry, I get all panicky. It wasn't. But each one of them, the boys, the girls, I never potch. What do I do with the girl? I don't know what to do. I don't even know what to do with girls. I had no idea. But I didn't have sisters growing up, so I was clueless. When it comes to the girls, I was absolutely clueless. And when I grew up, I had two brothers and myself. My father and I, my father, Al-Shalom, we were very close with our father. There was one crime in the house. The cardinal sin when I was growing up was raising my voice to my mother. If I ever raised my voice to my father materialized out of thin air. He got in my face, as they say, out of thin air. That was the cardinal sin. I couldn't do anything. So when my daughters, this was a shock to me, when the mother and daughter go at it. Now, you guys know what it's like. It's a completely different relationship. Your mother comes home and says, "Hi, I got you a sweater. I hate yellow. I hate yellow. I'm never going to yell yellow. I hate you. I hate everybody." And they go at it. Mother and daughter go at it. I'm like, whoa. And I remember the first time I wanted to intervene, and my wife just went, "It's girls. Just don't worry. It's girls." Yeah. And then they'll go at it, and it was remarkable. What's remarkable about this was actually, they'll go at it. Like, "I hate yellow, and I'll never wear yellow, and I hate yellow." And then they kind of take a break in the middle. And says, "Yeah, but you wore yellow at Cousin Shimmy's bar mitzvah." When? Right? Remember the bar mitzvah with the flowers on? Oh yeah, it's like they take a break to reminisce. Right in the middle of the thing, they're going to take a break, and then the break, and then they back to the battleground. So my wife happens to not be a yeller. My wife is more of an ignorer than a yeller. She doesn't yell. As a matter of fact, I'm married 40 years. Do you know that my wife has only yelled at me 3 times in 40 years? How do you like that, right? How do you like that? No, it doesn't mean she's been upset with me many hundreds of times, right? She just hasn't yelled at me. She just ignores me. She gives me a silent treatment. Back in the early days, that was worse, by the way. Silent treatment is terrible, And I would just follow her around the house. "Please talk to me. Please talk to me." So the 3 times she yelled at me were good. Those were for good reason. One of them was, it was an Erev Shabbos. We had a lot of guests coming to the house, and we had a leak in the bathroom sink. So I went up on the roof. I'm from Chicago. I went up on the roof and turned off the main water valve in the house. And she was in the kitchen. I didn't know you need water for cooking. I thought you need food for cooking. I had no idea. I thought water is for like coffee. And so she got panicky because a lot of people, and she goes out to the hallway. We're in Israel, or in Adira. She goes out there, turn on the water. I was trying to be so good. The second time I lost 2 passports on the day of our trip to go see her parents. And what do you call it? And it turned out I didn't lose them. We didn't have them. I couldn't find, my wife and I couldn't find our Israeli passports. And I called her from the early baggage. I had all the kids, myself. I couldn't find the passports. And she was in a panic. And then she comes back to the phone after looking for them in the house. And she starts telling me, "We don't have Israeli passports." My wife and I never got Israeli passports. And she started saying it very, very loudly into the phone. Yeah, that was a good yell. The third time was I took a medication and I had allergic reaction and almost died. But that was So she was jumping up and down. I remember she was jumping up and down. "You idiot!" Very encouraging. So you can't. What do you call it? I started saying on those occasions that I potched my sons, first of all, a father is not allowed to potch out of anger. I don't know how mothers do it with daughters. Once in a while, they just kind of a slap in passing. Mothers grab or something, whatever. My mother was worse than my getting potched by my father. Was my mother pulling me upstairs to straighten out my room because she would grab whatever she could get. it was either my ear or my neck or so. Like, get up, you will march. Mothers used to talk through their teeth with their teeth clenched. You are going to march up to your room right now. And up you go. And my father was just kind of, that was straight. Take the pain. We'll man up for that one. The halacha is you can't patch your children out of anger. It's a halacha. Father's angry, you're not allowed to patch. If Vilna Gaon says you're over, it's no different than hitting a Jew. So you're a Jew. At that moment, you're a Russia. You're Russia. You have to maybe show anger, but you're not allowed to patch out of anger. When I used to patch my sons, I used to tell them, okay, you're going to get 4 patches now. I would take them into the room. I'd make sure I'm breathing, not gritting my teeth. And I would take them across my lap, and 4 patches, boom, 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 boom. Okay, now settle down. Right? That was it. No, without the anger. And the child knew he deserved it, and the child knew that it's not coming from my own frustrations. When I was really upset, and I had one of my boys who could really push some buttons. I had all my daughters who could all push the buttons, but I had one son who would push the buttons. And when I'd really get upset with him, I would take him into the room and I put him into his bed and I would start patching the pillow. Because I was too afraid to patch him at that point. So I would just be patching the pillow, and and he hated that. He hated that. But the tzara shava, what I found, the common bond is the child with the father, that relationship with the father. When I was in yeshiva, I'm from Chicago, it's yeshiva, we drink pop in yeshiva on the roof. So when I was in yeshiva, the year after high school, there was a kid who came to Gemara Shir. He never had a Gemara in front of him. Kid sat in the Gemara Shir, never had a Gemara in front of him. And he participated in the Shir, didn't have a Gemara. He would just listen, he'd participate once in a while if there was a question, he'd say something in the discussion, but he never had a Gemara. So I asked the Rabbi once after Shir, how come he doesn't have a Gemara? So the Rabbi said to me, this kid, he was from France. His father, when he was 5 years old, and all the other kids went out to play, he made him come in at 5 years old. Instead of going out to play, he made him come in and he'd sit down and learn Gemara with him. And it was so torturous to the child. At 5 years old, he developed such a loathing for Gemara, he couldn't even look at a Gemara. It was a miracle that he was still Shomer Shabbos and came to yeshiva. But he developed such a loathing for it. It has to be, I always tell the fathers, when you learn with your sons, make sure, first of all, sometimes people will never sit down with a boy to learn with him. Let's learn. Always give a time. There's got to be a time limit. Otherwise, it's what Reb Chaim Shmulevitz is called avodas perach. Can't just say, let's learn. Kid has to know when it's going to end. I got news for you. Adults need to know when it's going to end. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz gave shiurim in Mir Yeshiva. He never went a second after 1 o'clock. The shir ended on a dime. Because human nature is up. As good as a shir is, when is it going to end? I had a Rebbe once who used to do that to us in shir. We'd get to 1 o'clock. And the Rebbe would then say, okay, does anybody object if we just finish it off over here? So nobody wants to be the Russia and say no. Nobody wants to be the one to say no. But if at that point I didn't hear a word he said, and then the next day I didn't hear a word he said, because all I'm thinking about is when's this going to end. A father learns with his son, instead of randomly, first of all, you have to set a time limit, and the time shouldn't be an hour. Let's learn for an hour. Kid can't sit there for an hour, and a father for sure can't sit there for an hour. My time limit for a kid, 20 minutes. Let's learn for 20 minutes. Child will have more energy because he knows it's shorter. And not only that, I would stop after 17 and I'd say, you really learned good. Okay, we're done. He goes, okay, let's learn some more. And he'd say, let's learn some more. When it has to be a chunk that he could feel and that he feels. That number with that. That's stam a tip for parents. This is not exactly our subject, but just as a tip. If you have a child in school learning Gemara, when kids are in those Gemara years, and the father's going to learn with the child, you have to make sure that you've learned the Gemara yourself before you learn with the child. Make sure you learn Gemara. Father has to know the Gemara. When your father sits down with his son to learn Gemara and the father hasn't learned it, it's just frustration. You don't know what's going on in the sugi. You got to work it out while you're there. You're trying to figure it out on the spot, and the child doesn't have the patience, the father doesn't have the patience, the whole thing's a disaster. You have to make sure that you learn the Gemara in advance. So Avram Avinu says, by the way, I'll just tell you a story. I'm picking on the men a little too much. But I'll just tell you a story. I heard it was a gan. And little Chani had a birthday party in the gan. So Chani's mother baked some chocolate chip cookies. And she sends Chani, she goes with Chani to the gan, 5-year-old Chani, 4-year-old Chani, she goes with her to the gan, and she starts giving out the chocolate chip cookies. And she gives one to Ptini. And the Ganena gets up and she walks over to Ptini and she takes the cookie away from her. So Chani's mother said, why did you take the cookie away from her? She says her mother doesn't let her have any sugar. She said, oh, come on, what, she got a problem? No, there's not a health issue. She doesn't want her have any sugar. Yeah, this one cookie, it's not going to hurt. She says, I did that once, and then I got an earful from her mother. I'm not going to do it again. She took away the cookie. All the kids are happily eating their cookies, and little Ptini is sitting there crying. After they finish eating the cookies, they go into the other room. They go into the next room. And the kids at the play area, the kids are playing, and at a certain point, the Ganenet notices that little Ptini is not there. She goes back into the first room, and there she is crawling around on the floor, eating the crumbs that fell off the floor from the other little girl's cookies. Isn't that a good story? That's a beautiful story, isn't it? So if a person's going to turn the screws too tough or too hard on the kids, a person understands that listen, you just got to you got to let them breathe. There's what I call a gray area. There's the red area, the green area, and there's the gray area. There's certain things that are absolutely permissible, certain things that are absolutely forbidden. Then you have a gray area with children. When it's in the green area, kid wants something, there's no reason they shouldn't have it. You could give it to them. There are other things at the red area. You cannot have a smartphone, not when you're 6 years old. You're not old enough yet. You're going to have to wait till after Meva Esra. You cannot have a smartphone, not when you're 6 years. You can't have, I want to get a motorcycle. You're not going to get a motorcycle. Now, that depends also on the age. Mothers make a mistake over here. Because sometimes, the 9-year-old walks in and says, Mommy, when I'm 16, I'm going to go bungee jumping. Mother, are you crazy? You can't go, how dangerous that is. You go to the motorcycle's a better example. Mommy, when I'm 16, I'm going to get a motorcycle. You can't get, how dangerous they are. When a kid said that to me, Daddy, when I'm 16, I get a motorcycle. I said, really, what color? Oh, no kidding. Yeah, you get Kawasaki or Yamaha? Which one's it going to be? You have to deal with that now. Things will change by the time they get to 60. All of a sudden the mother's like, really? Are you serious? I bet you can't. Yeah, and even when Mashiach comes, let it go. That's not such an issue. There are other things the kid wants. This is not going to happen. There's certain things that are forbidden. Certain things are usher. You can't have that. There are certain things that are gray area. The gray area is what I prefer he doesn't have, but I'll give in on it. One thing that I did not like were rollerblades. One of the reasons I didn't like rollerblades because I once read that is the number one injury in emergency rooms are broken wrists from falling off rollerblades. So my son wanted rollerblades. Now, obviously, he's a boy. I can't tell a boy, you would certainly prefer that all he does is sit in the house and learn Mishnayos and speak Aramaic. That's what we really want. But that's not realistic. So I have to get him the rollerblades. I said, okay, I prefer not, but I'll give it to him. Then he can't, when he asks for something I don't want him to have, he can't turn around and say, Daddy, you never gave us anything. That we want to avoid at all costs. And in the world that we live in, it's my father, he said to me, he used to say to me, to say no is much easier than to say yes. No is the easiest word. Now, I was raised, my kids once said to me, these are my parents' grandchildren, so they once said to me, wow, it must have been so much fun to be raised by Bubby and Zeta, because all they do is give candy and money. I was like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, oh, just candy and money all the time, yeah, So, it wasn't quite like that, yeah. So like all grandparents, my grandchildren come to the house, they get candy, the boys get money. They get candy and the girls get candy, boys get candy and money. I still favor the boys, but they come to the house. I give them candy. My daughter said, Daddy, don't give her so much candy. It's not good. Oh, don't tell me what to do. I raised you. I'll do whatever I want. Then I get the kids good and wired up, good and sugared up. I say, hey, your kid's out of control. You take care of it, will you? That's my sweet revenge for everything she's ever done to me. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so my father always showed when my older brother, he had his two kids. One was about 4, the other one was about 3. They came to my parents' house, we were all there, and they said, Zeta, we want to jump on the couch. So I know what my father's attitude was to jumping on couches in living rooms, because I grew up there, not on couches, jumping. And so I knew, my father said, so what does he do? I see him, he's taking the couch, and he says, just 1 second, and he turned the couch around and pushed it against the wall with the back of the couch as a protective wall, and he let them jump up and down on the couch. Obviously, for me, so I said, Dad, why'd you do that? I didn't have kids yet. I said, Dad, why'd you do that? He said they want to jump on the couch. Why shouldn't I let them jump on the couch? The easiest thing is to say no. Make it possible for them. If it's possible, make it possible for them. In our day and age, that's really the attitude parents have to have. Unless it's something that's usser, when you're into that gray area, because you're going to have to, there are too many things nowadays which are absolutely off limits. You got phone, the technology, all the technology, which is again a subject in and of itself. Weed is now legal, which has become a problem in the frum community. It's become a bigger problem than you think. It's become a problem in yeshivas. It's a problem on shidduchim. I got a call from a girl. She's going out with a serious ben Torah, but he smokes weed on the weekend, which means he's not a ben Torah, by the way. That just means he's not a ben Torah because number one, he's not only doing it on the weekend. If he's doing it, he's not only doing it on the weekend, and number two, that means he's not a serious ben Torah. But it's a problem. See, there are certain things you're going to have to say no. If the kid is within your range of saying no, you have to say no. Sometimes once they get to a certain age, they're not going to be asking you. At the end of the day, in the gray area where you prefer not, you're best off saying yes than no, because then you will have negotiate, you'll have leverage. The kid says to you, Daddy, but you never let me. I said, that's not true. I let you get this, and I bought you that, and I did that for you on those things that he wanted and he didn't want, as opposed to him coming along and saying, you never let us do anything. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Anybody have a question? Yes, go ahead.
What would you say the age is where a parent can no longer, is either not asked or you, what's that cutoff age? Would you say a range?
About 11. Now the truth is that it depends. A lot depends on the society. American society, I'm not sure about. Israeli society, the kids get it. It's a different society, and you always have to keep that in mind. The rules are different. Rav Leff mentions this all the time. The rules are different in different places. In Israeli society, the kids tend to become independent faster. I don't know why it is, and I don't know if it's a good thing, but they tend to become independent sooner. What I tell parents is that you're shooting for a goal where you shouldn't be having to pull rank on your kids. You should be creating a relationship where your kids don't want to disappoint you. Where you essentially, my father always told me to say, there's nothing you could do with a teenager who says, I won't. There's nothing you can do. A teenager who's not cooperative, what can you possibly do? Whether it's a kum v'aseh or it's a lo saseh, there's absolutely nothing you could do with a teenager who's uncooperative. You want to create a situation where the bond between the parents and the child is such the kids don't want their parents' disapproval. I want to do it, but I'm not going to do it because my parents don't approve. The kids don't want, you're trying to create a relationship over all these rules that people talk about. What can you possibly do? What can you possibly do? I tell people, do you think that there's a 15-year-old who smokes cigarettes? A 15-year-old who smokes cigarettes. Do you think that there's a 15-year-old in the world who isn't aware of the fact that his parents don't want him to smoke? Honestly, do you think the teenagers who smoke, do you think that any of them don't know their parents don't want them to smoke? I mean, do you really think that anybody knows? You know your parents don't want you to smoke. LMI, you have to hope, because a kid, I smoked as a teen, I smoked as a late teenager. I started late. I got to make up for those years, but I started late. But for a kid, I know parents don't want me to smoke. And I know that a kid who wants to smoke, so he won't smoke in the house, he'll smoke outside the house. You can't stop him. You can't stop a teenager. You have to create that relationship where the parents don't want. To pull rank at a certain point, the only thing parents have over their kids are the purse strings. At the end of the day, listen, I can't stop you, but I'm certainly not going to fund this. There's nothing I can do to stop you, but I'm certainly not going to give you money for it. We have this sometimes with Bachram and Yeshiva who would like to come back there to Israel, base Israel for a second year, the third year. And the parents say, well, no, we want them to do something else. And Bachram asks me, what should I do? I want to come back for a third year in Israel to learn Torah. My parents want me to start school now. What should I do? My standard response to the guys is, listen, the first thing is we don't want any animosity. We don't want any fighting with parents. That's the first thing. But you have to think to yourself, did you ever discuss with your parents? Take a 19-year-old who wants to come back did you ever sit down and discuss with your parents? How do we reach decisions? Right? Most people never talk to their kids about that. Never discuss it, especially with the oldest kid. The oldest kid says, I told the kid, ask your parents, do I have any say in the matter? Very few parents are going to say to a 19 or 20-year-old, no, you have no say. Okay, so how do we reach a decision over here? So there are parents who will say, listen, I can't stop you, but I'm not paying for it. That happens. That happens. But at a certain point, you don't have much more control than that. You don't have much more control, and you have to hope that obviously, when the kids are young, obviously the parents make the decisions for them. If the kid is, if the kid at any age is makabel the parent's decision, then you keep it as long as you can, right? If the kid is uncooperative, so it's not, there's no age limit on this. But more important is to develop that type of relationship where the kids have you, where you're on the same page, where you're on the same team. That's extremely important. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Go back to the first part.
Yeah.
About modeling, in terms of not leaving your soap right there and just being implicit. What are we supposed to do at the Maisa when the moments happen? Obviously, we should be modeling right speech, right talk, right all that in general. But at the Maisa,
at the moment, the best policy is a calm display of disapproval.
and how are we addressing it?
And just say to the kid, listen, a mensch doesn't say those words. A mensch doesn't talk to you. Better, maybe we shouldn't talk about people right now. It's lashon hara, and it's lashon hara. We're not supposed to be doing it. Huh?
What is the
Oh, chutzpah is one of my favorite topics because chutzpah. Chutzpah is because chutzpah is an ambiguous definition. Rabbi Aaron Leib Shteyman said, Rav Shteyman Zatzal, he said, what a child does in the house is not chutzpah. In chutzpah, you see, the problem is anything could be called chutzpah. Anything could be called chutzpah. If the kid sneaks a cookie, a chutzpah. If somebody takes your parking space, a chutzpah. There's no end to that sort of thing. Where does chutzpah begin? I don't know exactly where. My general approach with misbehavior, I rarely punished my kids because more than a punishment, I was much more concerned to figure out why is he doing that? Why are they acting out? If a kid is being chutzpah, if a kid's upset, either he's overtired or he's overtired, he's hungry, he's frustrated, he's had a rough day, and ultimately all he's doing is imitating adults. Right? When I see adults fighting, I don't say, why are you behaving like a couple of kids? When I see kids fighting, I say, why are you guys behaving like adults? Right? And adults have much bigger fights than kids do. Right? Kids make up it after 5 minutes. Adults don't talk to each other for 30 years. So, b'shas ma'isa, chutzpah is a very difficult thing to define. I'm much more concerned with why is he doing it? What's bothering him? Did something happen in school? Did something happen with his friends? Is she upset because her best friend forever is no longer her best friend forever? She was only her best friend forever for 20 minutes. What's bothering her? What's bothering the child? I want to get to the root of the problem. What good does it do me to so you have to have a certain amount of control in the house. I used to take the kids when they're out of control, Lel Shabbos at the table. If anybody got out of control, I would just take them in gently into the other room. I would just say, okay, let's just calm down, and that way I got to lie down, right? And within about 10 or 15 minutes, it worked. I was asleep. The kid came back walking out to the table. It was a pleasure. I want to know more. I want to get to the source. I want to find out what's happening over here. The only time I consider it chutzpah, what I really consider chutzpah, is when a kid who everything is good, he's happy, he's fine, and he starts just become like mimicking people or talking in a way where there's no real reason why he's doing it. If he's frustrated, if a kid's frustrated, we're just models when we're frustrated. Our behavior is just so wonderful when we're frustrated. When we're frustrated, we also lash out sometimes. Oh, that's chutzpah. There's no end to that. There's no end to that. B'shas ma'isa is often, you shouldn't be doing that. Just stop. Just stop. You don't need to be doing that right now, right? And if the other person is upset, so how do you feel when you're upset? Not that you ever get upset, but if you are upset and somebody starts saying, "Oh, don't be upset," what happens? It just makes you more upset. Children are people, believe it or not. Some of them, right? Certainly more than adults, right? And so he's upset. The kid's upset. I can't deal with the kid right now. Afterwards, say, what's happening? Listen, my son. I have 4 boys. I have 4 boys and 4 that are not boys. And my third son, who was the most extremely cooperative, and he once we were supposed to go swimming on I'm just telling you this. I'm not proud of this now. Are we supposed to stop? Oh, okay. Sorry. We have to. I'll just tell you this very quickly. We're supposed to go. I didn't realize I lost track of time. We're supposed to go swimming on a Friday, and we were going to meet with 2 other families. We had hired a tender to go to the beach. And at the end of the day, and I told my son, come up right after Cheder at 12 o'clock. At 12:05, he should have been up. To say Cheder is down the stairs in the next one. He should have come up. It's 12:30. Finally, we're waiting for him. Where are you? Where are you? Where? Finally, he pitches up. 12:30, he pitches up. I said, what happened? It was him and the other boy at the recess. He was about 9 or 10 years old at the time. Him and the other boy did something that requires Asher Yatzar on the Rebbe's chair at the break, right? So I wasn't even the least bit upset. I just said to him, why did you do it? It was so out of character. If it would have been one of my other sons, that I would have, I said, why? Because I figured if he's doing something like that, something must have triggered him off. He goes, well, the Rebbe got us upset. He was unfair to us, and it was Yankee's idea, and we shouldn't have done it. So as soon as he told me, number one, as soon as he told me we shouldn't have done it, so I realized, what am I going to punish him for now? He's not going to do it again. He's not going to do it in the future. And he regrets having done it now. So what's the point of punishing him? The bracha of Atala to punish him. But I want to know, why did you do it? First, if there's no good reason, then you need then we'll have to deal with it. But first, I want to know why you did it. Let's get to the root of the problem. Sarei Menu, after all is said and done, so she finally has her child after all those years. And we also don't find Sarei Menu talking to Yitzchak. We only find Avram talking to him twice, both times as a term of affection. Both times, B'ni. He says B'ni. Because he didn't need to speak to Yitzchak, he spoke through his actions. The Midrashim say they learned Torah together. They spoke many thousands of times. The Torah is conspicuous in its absence of conversation between Avram and Yitzchak, because Avram obviously taught Yitzchak by example. You go to Sarei Menu. After having did Sarah say, I'm sure that Sarah said Shema with Yitzchak when he was there, and she said Moda'ani, and they made brachas together, and all it. Torah doesn't say a word about it. Torah says one thing in Sarei Meinu's chinuch. The first thing and the only thing it tells us about Sarah's chinuch is what? Get that no good Yishmael out of here. Get Yishmael out of here. That means Yishmael is avodah zarah, giluras, and shvichus damim. He was guilty. Sarah saw tendencies of all three. Says, get that no good Yishmael out of here. Why? Because all of the good that parents you could focus on all the good in the world. If the negative influence is around, it could wash out everything else. Today, Baruch Hashem, Chazdei Hashem Yisbarach, we have now an item that we could hold in our hands and have avodah zarah, gilui shah, gilui ras, shvichus damim at the convenience in the palm of our hands. Right? We have avodah zarah, gilui shvichus damim. Unless people get that under control, and I'm glad I'm out of time, so I don't have to speak about how to do it because I have no idea. But unless people could get that area of the technology has to be controlled. And again, technology is relative to where you live in Israel. The rules for technology are different than the rules in America, and the schools that are different, what they require at the minimum, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, Sarei Menu, the first thing she does is you got to get the negative influences out of the life, and you should never be apologetic if you have kids that you don't want your kids playing with. We didn't allow our kids, certain neighbors, they had technology we didn't want, so we wouldn't let them go play. And sometimes people get upset. What, are you saying we're treif? I'm not saying you're treif. I didn't check to see if you split hooves or not. I'm not saying you're treif. All I'm saying is that the technology is treif. And I don't want my kid with the technology. The people get upset, so they get upset. So what? Let them get the technology. They don't have to get upset. I don't have to be makriv my kids as a korban because other people are getting upset. I have a right to make those rules. You want my kids to come over? Fine, your kids can come over to my house. I can't have my kids go into a house. Same way if you had pork on the table, I wouldn't let my kids go into your house. I can't. What do I do? I either be upset, you're upset, and we'll get past it. And ultimately, there has to be a tremendous amount of tefillah.